Welcome to this episode of Harvey County Talk. I'm your host, Lance Gormley. Our sponsor for this episode is Hall's Tree Service. Hall's Tree Service has been locally owned and operated for over 40 years. Look, there is no job too small, no tree too tall. You can call Hall's, and Larry and his crew are guaranteed to work hard for you. That's 316-772-1919. That's a 316-772-1919. Call Halls. Our guest on the program today is Shawn Chapman, who is the Undersheriff for Harvey County. How you doing today, Shawn?
I'm doing just fine, thank you.
Yeah. The first time I met you, I believe that it was in conjunction with our sheriff, Chad. You were at an event. I was at an event. I met you as the Undersheriff, and I was like, this guy seems like a pretty interesting guy. And I talked to Chad at one time or another, and he told me, all the things that you do. And I thought, that would be a person that I want to get out here on the program to just talk to about what your job entails, but even then, why you got into law enforcement and more so like when you, where'd you grow up? These type of things. So where did you grow up and did you play any sports during school, or what kind of activities did you enjoy doing during your school years?
All right. So grew up in Sedgwick. I'm a Sedgwick small town kid, I always like to say. Played back then when there was only football, basketball, and track at the time, and I played all the sports. Actually, and I'll tell the story on myself is, believe it or not, I was big into choir, and I was a soloist for the school, and actually went to state competition many times when received 1 ratings. So
very cool.
I don't know why I didn't go be a famous musician or singer, probably because I was destined to be a cop. Unfortunately.
Yeah, well, they have some greats, and you're probably potentially a great, but I
would probably say I'm the world's okayest at about everything.
Yeah,
so,
well, it sounds like you were involved. But small town schools, interestingly enough, it's not uncommon for people to participate in multiple sports.
Sure.
But what was the most enjoyable thing to you about? Which one did you like the most? Or if you didn't have a preference, like what did you like about the whole process of going out and competing, or what was that like?
So I mean, probably my favorite thing to do was probably the arts and doing the music and singing and things like that. Sports obviously were great. Played football and had several winning seasons back in those days. But part of it's just growing up in a small town and having the ability to have as whatever opportunity you wanted to create for yourself. And so I was very fortunate to be a part of a small community, and fast forward and I'm back there today, serving on the school board, as a matter of fact. So that's kind of always going to be home for me. And so it was just important that we were able to have those experiences, and it helps mold who you are today. At least I like to think that. So don't ask any of my teachers; they might tell you some stories. So.
Right. Well, I was going to say, I always want to ask the question, but never do. So I'll ask the question that you don't have to answer. If I was talking to your 3rd grade teacher right now, what would she say about you?
Well, that's a great question. And actually, she's not quite 3rd, maybe 4th grade, but she's actually our superintendent right now.
Oh, awesome.
So,
So she probably thinks you're an all right guy, giving you a board member.
Yeah, she's like, oh, he's great. He's a really nice guy.
I love it. Yeah. No. So you graduated from high school, and then what did your life look like after that?
Really, it was. I went into actually my parents. They're like, hey, you need to do something, because I was a freshly graduated high school.
Yes.
And so I was like, well, I'll try a semester of college, and so I did. I tried a semester of college, and actually my major. Don't tell anybody, but it was vocal music performance.
Very cool.
And so I went to McPherson College for a semester and realized very quickly that I was not dedicated enough to see that through at that time in my life.
Yeah.
So I did that, and then just started working. I figured, my dad had worked 33 years with Southwestern Bell.
Okay.
So And he always had a part-time job as doing electrical work or electrician stuff. And so kind of had a passion for the trades. And so I looked to try to get into a trade, and I kind of started, I got into plumbing. So that was interesting for a young kid, and having to run a shovel most of the time and crawl spaces and things like that.
Well, and learn a lot. You're going to learn a lot when it comes to that. I tell you, plumbing, you say that. I think there's a lack of plumbers today.
Oh, yeah.
I think there really is in that profession, and people that want to do that trade. So I might give you a call.
See, I knew it. See, I was trying to. I'm ended up with a bunch of phone calls out of this. Hey, what do you charge?
But okay, so you're doing the plumbing thing, right? And then from there, did you just kind of decide, this might not be my lifelong goal, or
this might not be my lifelong? And I enjoy the trades. For me, it was just problem solving, and you have an issue, and then you have to find some sort of resolution out of it. And so, part of that was very enjoying, and still kind of is, but. I did that, and then had an opportunity to try out or apply for the reserves for the McPherson Police Department, because I was living in McPherson at the time, and did that, completed the testing, and instead of offering me a reserve position, which is unpaid, they said, hey, how about full-time? And I'm like, okay, sounds good.
And that was back in the days when they had lots of people applying for law enforcement positions. There wasn't like a lack of needing them. So you must be like a star athlete too.
No, like I said, world's okayest at just about everything. So
I love it. Just take me back to that moment. I mean, when we think about the fact that you're there, you're just wanting to kind of get involved. You do their PT test, you say, for the reserves, and then they offer you a full-time job. Were you kind of like, wow? I mean, wow, that's What was your thoughts on that?
Man, I was like, well, hey, first, how much does it pay? And I think at the time it was like $12.50 an hour, and I was like, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But granted, this is early 2000s when that was a lot of money for a small town kid that didn't have a lot of life experience, and they took a chance on me. Yeah. And so I felt indebted that, or honored enough that they felt that I was the guy for a full-time job. And that's when I kind of knew it was like, maybe I can make a career out of this. And so started doing that, and
fell in love. Okay, so you're in McPherson. You're doing the thing in McPherson, and then I know you when we were either talking before or so far in the program, I can't remember, but that somehow you transferred over here to Newton.
I did. So, and I'll be very candid. I believe it or not, I have 6 children. I do. Yeah. I have 2 adult children from my previous marriage, and then I have 4 that are ages 17 down to 10. Wow. So. Busy, and I have 1 grandchild, and she's a doll. So went through divorce, and with most people, when they go through divorce, it's like, okay, I get a second chance to try to make something different. And I took an opportunity, and I actually took a job and a pretty hefty pay cut, and I went to Belle Plaine, Kansas.
Okay.
As a patrol officer. I answered an ad out of a paper, and they offered me a job, and I moved out of McPherson, my parents at the time, we had moved to McPherson, ended up moving back to Sedgwick. And so at that time I was like, well, I'll just stay with them until I get on my feet. Yeah. So I did that. Realized very quickly Belle Plaine was a very small town. Yeah. And I was still pretty young and had a little bit of vinegar in me still. Yeah. And so I was like, believe it or not, I went to the academy back in January of 2002 is when I went to the academy. And one of the guys I went to the academy with was Brandon Huntley, who is currently our patrol captain for the sheriff's office. And so I reached out to Brandon and said, hey, are you guys hiring in Newton? He's like, yes. And so came to Newton, applied, and they took a shot on me in Newton. So I came to Newton in June of 2005. So
that puts you a little bit closer to home.
Yep.
Yeah. So was the decision to go to Belle Plaine just kind of like a location change, to, like you were saying, a new start, and then, some of your old roots and relationships that you had, gave you the opportunity to come here and call here home.
Yeah, so much of even law enforcement or any just life in general is mostly about building relationships, and the opportunity that I had a relationship with Brandon, and he was able to put in a good word for me. I don't know if he might have fibbed a little bit. No, If you can't tell, I like the joke a lot.
Yeah.
So,
I get it. I got your humor. Don't worry.
But yeah, it worked out. He got me in. I got to meet some great guys at Newton and got me close to home. Being a Sedgwick kid and Harvey County kid most of my life. And it's like, even when I was out of Harvey County, this place was home. Yeah. And so the more and more I started getting into it, I was like, man, your desire to serve and serve people that you know, and there's a familiarity, and it's back to that, just building relationships with people.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't take long, and after a while, you've already began to establish relationships with people in the community, which then just enhances the feeling of service that you get by doing what you're doing. I know this. I don't want to speak off, but something I noticed personally about my local law enforcement community is that they're a very tight-knit group of people. And it seems like there's, maybe that's public facing or something, but it appears as though both the sheriff's department and Newton PD, and that there's just, I don't want to call it a brotherhood, right? But more of a family, right? Of individuals who are all trying to do their best to go out every day, put their best foot forward, serve the community in a good way, and build relationship like what you're talking about. I see you guys try to do it all the time, all of you. You know?
Well, I will say that, it's kind of like a brother relationship where we have days where we want to argue and wrestle and do things that brothers do.
Yeah.
But when we're in the middle of a crisis, all of that goes out the window.
Yeah.
And we all come together and we do the job. And at the end of the day, it's mission specific. We have to complete the mission regardless whether you and I just had an argument, but if something bad's happening and we need to serve, we flip that switch and we have to serve. Yeah. So I would say that a lot of our local within Harvey County, we all are similar in that fashion where when it's time to do work, we do work, but for the most part, everybody's doing the same job. And we're fortunate to have the law enforcement presence that we do in Harvey County. So.
Yeah, thankful for that. I know I am thankful for that as well, because I know it's good to see you all out there making sure that our community is safe, standing in the gap for me. Mm-hmm. I don't have a question about if I ever needed to make a phone call for help, that you all would be there. And there was another sheriff's officer on here the other day, K9 Max, right?
Oh, yeah.
And he was talking about just being out there in the country and the community, and it dawned on me that in some cases as sheriff's officers, you guys might be the first person to show up to administer medical attention. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is not, there's so much help you all offer besides just showing up to a bad situation on somebody's bad day that... there's just so much more that has to offer. But I'm interested. You have 6 kids.
Yes.
I have 6 kids too. So you're also involved as a school board member, and you're involved in football too, aren't you? Because I seen that.
Football,
okay. So I just want to kind of take a side road here to, I'm always interested in the man behind the badge, right? Or the person behind and the personal life of it. But you have 6 kids ranging in all those ages. Are they involved in just all kinds of stuff all the time?
We have Sundays off. I think is about the only day off we have. It's nonstop. But again, it's about that opportunity. That's why we moved back to. I did live in Newton for a little bit with my current wife, and then we moved back home because I just felt that Sedgwick was the right place for my family.
Yeah.
And so we did that. But man, it's busy. We're playing in the Railer Bowl this weekend, my junior football team.
Very cool.
I've been coaching them for 5-6 years now.
Very cool.
It's busy.
Yeah, so you get busy, you get involved, and then so you're a school board person.
Yep.
So I don't know if Sedgwick is like Newton in reference to the kind of politics and politicking that takes place, but is it a little bit different as far as just take me to running for school board and choosing to do that, and that's kind of what was going on there at the time, and did they had any hot button political issues at the time, or like what inspired you to want to get involved in that political position? For what reason?
It was the pay. I mean, it was 100%, 100% the pay. No, running for school board is something that I kind of. It's one of those things where most men, and I don't say that just men, but most people, I would like to think that when they say they're going to do something, or they usually shoot their mouth off or say something like, "Oh, well, I could do that." Well, then you do it, and then you're like, "Man, why did I do that?"
Yeah, right. No, it's like, well, I thought it was going to be one thing, but it turned into something else.
Yeah, no. So there was really no hot button issues other than the fact that I had 4 children in the district, and it's like I looked at the current school board, and they're all great people, but I thought there was a little bit of a disconnect, mostly because we were growing a little, and that was I go back to the school, and they did a bond issue back in like '97. And they added a big gymnasium and some classrooms, and that was pretty nice for the district at the time. But it's like, okay, we're not doing anything to really improve upon what we have.
Yeah.
And we got kids still running on a dirt track. That's the same dirt track that I ran on in high school. We never had the facilities. And so I was like, well, let's have some more conversations about this. And when I ran for school board, I ran against a guy who I have a ton of respect for. He actually was my t-ball coach and baseball coach growing up, and he'd been on the school board for over 20 years. I mean, he'd been on there quite a long time, and I went and had a conversation with him, said, "Hey, I'm going to run for school board. I just want people, I want to get my name out there. I want to let people know that when you're done, I want your spot."
Yeah.
And so I think my wife made one Facebook post for me, and then I didn't buy a sign. I didn't do anything like that. And then when it came to election time, they elected me in.
Yeah.
And so I felt like, oh, this just got real.
Yeah.
And so now it's time to go to work, and how can we really fix this district and start aiming towards the future to build a sustainable district.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that, because I went over there to a parade here recently.
Yeah.
And I had gotten a chance to tour, not the inside of the facilities, but there's some changes taking place there. I mean, you can see that there's some improvements. So not only, I'm guessing, did you get elected, but then I don't want to say capitalize, because that's not the right word, but you followed through with what you were saying. And now you're starting to see as a community the benefits of that forward thinking, or that vision that you would set forth.
And really the vision had started prior to me getting there. I think that, they had started having some talks about maybe passing a bond issue. And that was right before I got on the board. And then when I got on the board, COVID hit. Yeah. And I was like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
So then we had to go through the whole COVID thing. And then coming out of it, we were able, I think, taking that little bit of pause and really trying to refine what we as a community desired for our district. A lot of community meetings, asked a lot of people to be at the table and be stakeholders in this. What are we willing to do for our kids?
Yeah.
And so people say COVID, it really kind of put a pause on things, but I think it worked out for us that we had that opportunity coming out of COVID to have more conversations. And, we ended up passing a $13.5 million bond in a small town. That's a 1A for football and 2A for, I think, basketball and other sports. But, I think our current enrollment's like 450. So we're seeing, it's kind of stable, but again, just like Newton struggles with is it's housing.
Yeah.
And how do you bring more people into a community if you don't have anywhere for them to be?
Yeah.
So,
and then how do you get somebody to invest in the future that may not exist? You can say all day long, hey, if we build a few houses here, people will come live. But until you can see that take place, you're looking at a year and a half down the road. By the time the house is built, it's sold and somebody's living in it. So yeah, that's rough. But to bring up something, I do taking a side road here.
Please,
on
I like side roads.
Your school board mentality, but your leadership mentality. I like the idea that you are able to see that a school has an economic or is an economic driver for a community.
Sure.
And so in the same breath, you're saying, hey, this is an economic driver. If we're doing something with our school and we're progressing forward, that then that pivots over into people wanting to come live in our community, which means houses built, which means good spot, which means businesses, et cetera,
Sure.
et cetera. So that's a good foundational principle, I believe. And I just want to say kudos to you,
Yeah.
as if my opinion matters. So take me, now we'll go back to the law enforcement thing. What, you started at Newton PD.
Yep.
Okay. And then you went over to the sheriff's department at some point in time.
Yep.
Then from there, how long did you work at the sheriff's department? And then you became the undersheriff. So just walk me through, an overview of that process for you, how you became the undersheriff.
Sure. Again, it's I think partially being right place, right time. So I'd worked at Newton PD 05 to 07, and then actually 08, and I came over to the sheriff's office in March of 2008.
Okay.
And so basically I worked patrol my most of my career and was a ERT operator for several years. And so doing those types of risky things is, what a young guy likes to do in law enforcement. So I did that, and so I already had kind of a relationship with a lot of the sheriff's office folks because we'd been on the joint SWAT team for many years together, and so had an opportunity to come in under Sheriff Wuthnow and under Sheriff Tyner.
Okay.
And they offered me a job, and so I came over there and started working patrol, and that went until Jim Sauerwein, who retired from the sheriff's office around 2011, 2012, and that's when I was able to get promoted to detective.
Okay.
And so that's really when I got into this, I only had one goal. And the one goal was to be a detective. I want to be Columbo. I want to be that guy. And so I did everything I could to try to hone those skills before I got to investigation, as being very thorough, getting involved in my cases and making them very personal to me to make sure that I was doing right by most everybody I dealt with.
Yep.
And so when the opportunity came to move to investigations, I figured I'd peak. That was it. I'm just going to do this, and I was able to be a detective under T. Walton for several years, and then up until he left the sheriff's office or retired. And then when Chad was starting to run his campaign, he had asked me about right before I think we got close to the primary, and he's like, "Hey, what do you think about being my undersheriff?" And I was like, "Are you sure about that?" I mean, he's like, "No, you're the guy." And so I was like, "Wow, thank you for thinking I'm the guy to do that." And so I had to kind of mull it over because it's a risky move for me. I've if I agreed to be his undersheriff and we go to a primary and then we don't win, then the sheriff could come in and say, "Well, you were vying to be undersheriff, and I don't necessarily want you to be here."
It's not good for my leadership.
Right.
Well, I was going to ask you, Chad, or Shawn, how many sheriffs have you been employed under? I mean,
so I had it was AJ who was appointed, and then it was T, and now Chad. So 3 sheriffs.
Okay.
And so when the opportunity came, and I said, "Yeah, let's do it, and let's do it together." And I kind of just put it all out there and gambled a little bit, and ended up paying off.
Yeah.
And I would say that it's worked out pretty well. Chad is he's a guy that doesn't know a stranger.
Yeah.
I always make fun of him all the time. He's the last Boy Scout, and he really is.
Yeah.
Like every day he walks into the sheriff's office, and I watch him. Now I see guys doing it too, but if he's a piece of trash on the ground, he picks it up and he comes in and puts it in the trash. I mean, that's just who he is. Yeah. And so to watch and kind of learn just how he is with people, it's fun to watch. Now, it does make the lunch hour go a long time if we go to lunch somewhere, because he'll talk to everybody. And
you're not getting out of there.
No, so I might as well sit down and get a refill, because it's going to be a little bit. So
doesn't know a stranger.
Yep.
Yeah, you said that, and that's true. That's true. There's an element that I want to bring out. You had mentioned if you are an undersheriff, that's not necessarily a political position, but a sheriff's position is.
Correct.
So if you're signed up to be their right hand man per se, or their right hand person per se.
Yeah.
Right. Being all inclusive here. But just the, not to say that's a negative thing, but does that really complicate, like if that were to be the case where you were to run and let's say Chad didn't win and then you were the undersheriff, is there like a common practice there that person kind of finds another job? I mean, it's nothing saying, but I mean, I don't know. I don't see that as a bad thing. It's unfortunate, but kind of, is that just the knowledge that takes place at that time?
Yeah. So, I mean, the undersheriff is an appointed position. So I work at the luxury of the sheriff, and at any time I can be unappointed. Yeah. And so typically most sheriffs, when they come in, will bring whoever they want to be their number 2 guy or their undersheriff. So I don't know what it's like in the bigger agencies, but here in Harvey County, that's historically what it's been like. So,
okay, very good. So, what do you do as an undersheriff?
So, I joke all the time. I do everything that the sheriff doesn't want to. So,
that's within your scope.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. When it says other duties assigned in your job description, that means other duties assigned. No, so we have a pretty good structure of kind of how we roll, and just the hierarchy is the sheriff oversees the jail, so he has a sheriff captain that helps with that. I oversee investigations, anything from the criminal investigations to internal investigations, things like that. And then we have a patrol captain that manages and functions of everything that has to do with the patrol. So typically my day-to-day is managing investigations, both general investigations and our criminal interdiction unit that we have. And then a lot of the other shared responsibilities, Chad likes to do the budget, and then I do a lot of the capital project, more of the big ticket, 5-year plan type stuff. Okay. So it's kind of a shared responsibility, and but we both have say and knowledge when it comes to the budget and capital projects. So,
well, is that job just kind of like any other job? I mean, when you look at it as far as law enforcement, and it's very, I'm going to say, duty driven. So if you're a detective, that's what your job is. That's what you do. If you're a patrol officer, that's what you do. I mean, there probably is some shared responsibility there. Sure. But as far as an undersheriff is concerned, is there any other job that's similar to that besides like maybe an assistant chief?
Yeah, it would probably be similar to like an assistant chief. Some, I think, in the bigger ones are either lieutenants or captains or something like that. Okay. So it's undersheriff. There's other sheriff's office where the sheriff runs the office, and then a lot of undersheriffs run the jail and jail operations. But we do things a little different. But so.
So, but once again, it always goes back to whatever the sheriff of the county wants for their undersheriff to do. That's what they do. So your job description is not necessarily the same as the undersheriff when T was the sheriff.
Correct.
Or when, I mean, it's just, it just changes.
It does.
Yeah. So when you got into that position, and well, I guess, no, I want to go here. I like politics, right?
Let's do it.
Okay. So knowing that the sheriff is the elected position,
correct,
that you're putting yourself out there to run with them, right? Obviously, your name is there, just like their name is there. When you do that, and you're looking at, well, there was no general in the one that you had. There was just a primary, or was there a primary and a general? I can't remember.
There was
which
a
one.
Primary. The first election was a primary and a general.
Okay. So you had to sweat it out twice.
Yeah.
Right. You had to sit there and watch those numbers come in twice, and that's like double whammy there. That's on who you are as a person. I don't care who's running for any kind of an elected position. There's a moment in which you've done everything that you could possibly do. You're standing there. You're watching the votes roll in, or you go to sleep. Some people do all kinds of things, but when you're there in that moment, did you feel good about the situation, or were you concerned? I mean, what was your headspace like just the moments before we're watching all this unfold?
Well, at the time I was an avid runner at the time, and so I had ran a lot during the campaign just to clear my head and things like that. So I was half the man I am now. I was pretty skinny back then. So
let your time and drop 20 pounds.
I did. I was like, man, here we go. When you're going through election night process and you really especially in the general. I was nervous during the, I'll just say all of it, but the general, that's the big one. And so watching the first batch of numbers come through, and it's like, oh, that didn't look good.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, here we go. What's happening? And then you just kind of go those peaks and valleys of, oh, there's coming more, or is it, and, you know, where we at? And then towards the tail end of it, I mean, it was a pretty good victory for the Chad's campaign. And at that time, I was like, okay, this just got real.
Yeah.
And this is going to happen. And so it's this euphoric kind of release of, okay, everything that you've done, all the parades, all the things that you've gone to, and it's paid off. And now it's really big, because now you answer to the people. Now the people are expecting what you guys promised, and are you going to follow through with that? So then it becomes a very short-lived, yeah, we did it, now we got to do work now.
Accountability time.
Yeah.
Interesting. Is there, you said kind of a euphoric moment, you get into it and you start moving in that position. Was there anything like right off the bat where you were like, whoa, this is a lot? Was there anything that just stood out where, because I know with what I've learned through my education, right, and in my MPA, that there's so much math and there's so much budgeting and this and that and everything else. And it was very challenging for me to get my head wrapped around it. And I could only imagine somebody sitting in the similar position as you, like, I'm now confronted same way I was and trying to learn this stuff.
Right.
We're both in the seat trying to learn, except for I was learning it and could not do so well. You have to be spot on. There is no mistakes.
Yeah. There's an expectation that you get it right all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so, I'll tell you that first January after we took office, right towards the end of January, we had that triple homicide up on Spencer.
Yeah.
And that was the phone call I got at, like, I don't know, 2:00 in the morning from the sheriff. Says, hey, got a triple. I'm like, no way. He's like, yeah, time to go to work. Yeah. And that's what we did. So, you know, operationally, the work is, that's the stuff that you're comfortable with, right? Yeah. You've done that through your career. You know, we've had quite a bit of that over the last several years. Yeah. And so we've got pretty good at doing a lot of those cases. But then, while you're thinking about this triple homicide and all this other stuff, and then here's a budget.
Yeah.
Let's figure this out.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you really have to, for me, it was trying to find ways to get myself the education or some training. And so I went through the Wichita State mini MPA class.
Very cool.
I did that.
Yeah,
and
go
then,
Shocks.
Yeah, go Shocks. And that was like, okay, this was my first introduction to it. And then a few years later, I went through the year-long Leela Command School. Cool. Got my certified public manager for law enforcement.
Cool.
So a lot of those things have helped me understand big picture stuff. The numbers are the numbers, right? You have little control over the numbers. You have a projection, but ultimately the commission is the one that grants. Okay, we can do that. So, and again, it goes back to building that relationship and partnership. And we've been very fortunate to have a pretty good county commission that's been very law enforcement friendly. Yeah. County administrator that's always willing to help, finance people that are really just trying to make the organization strong and sustainable. So,
well, so you said that you only did one semester of college as you were growing up and everything, but you obviously, that's going back to school and as an adult, and those are some hefty programs. I'm telling you right now, and then you're on the speed track for some of that stuff. So when you went back to school as an adult, did you find that you had more interest because it was applicable to what you were doing? I
did, because at that point, like, you know, I've always kind of carried this, I wouldn't say a chip on my shoulder or not, but I want to prove people wrong. Yeah. If people don't have the confidence in me, or if they don't feel that I'm capable of doing something, I'm like, okay, let me prove you wrong. And so I'm going to work just that much harder to make sure I get it right. Yeah. And so going through those classes as an adult, it was tough, but again, I was more focused, and it was basically mission specific. I've got to do this for the mission to make us successful as an office.
Yeah.
So.
Got to do it. Got to do it. And then that adult mind in you makes you do it. It just
100%.
makes you do it. You had mentioned something, and I was anticipating you to say one thing, but you said something else. And so when you said just briefly, like, so you've been through all this that we've had here in Newton, this rough spot, the Harvey County rough spot, I call it, where it was coupled here, 3 here, mass shooting, the whole thing. So you mentioned you're over here, you're doing this, and then the next thing you have to go over to a budget, but you had to go home.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of always asking when people are nice enough, law enforcement officers are nice enough to come out on the program and just to share their experience, that I ask kind of what's one of the most difficult things, what's one of the things that's the most difficult for you about your job, or the biggest challenges. I gotta ask, man, is it family?
Family is tough, but honestly, family for me is kind of, my wife has been such a great partner when it comes to keeping me grounded, giving me opportunity, because she spent 14 and a half years in the military.
Okay.
And so her background's a little different, but it's very much mission based. And so
understand,
she gets the mission. She understands what we do, and a lot of missed birthdays, a lot of missed parties, walking out in the middle of a family gathering because I got to go to work. And so she's a saint. And honestly, I mean, she's way far probably the backbone of our family. And so I'm thankful that I have her. When it comes to the job specific, it's that balance of family versus the job. And at some point, law enforcement, it becomes so much of your identity, it's hard to turn it off. We always wife and I play this game. We go, we went car shopping several years ago. Didn't buy anything because we couldn't afford it, but we went car shopping anyway. And we always play this game. She thinks it's hilarious. I think it's kind of funny too, is we walk in somewhere and she's like, 2 guesses. What's this guy do for a living? And he's like, most people are like, cop.
Yeah.
Everybody's cop. And it's like, I can't wash it off.
No,
man. I've tried.
You can't. You can't.
Like,
that's funny.
I can grow a beard. I can grow my hair out. Nope, he's a cop. It's like, so it becomes so much of your identity that at some point in your career, you have to make a decision of, is that going to be who I am? And generally, yeah, that's who you are. Yeah. But you can also find life after law enforcement or during law enforcement that kind of separates you from that and kind of shields you. Yeah. Because we're all really good at compartmentalizing in just about everything, because there's just so much trauma, there's so much evil. I mean, it's in this world, and it's like you got to understand that it takes people like us to do those things, because not everybody can.
Yeah,
not everybody's wired that way. So, for me, it's my family. Like, and I tell this story all the time. It's not much of a story, but when you get off work and you drive home, I got my drive from Newton to Cedric every day, and it's like, what do you do? Well, I turn everything off. I leave the radio on really low, so I can hear if there's a call or something, but just silence. Yeah. And that's where you can self-reflect. That's where you can kind of take that minute to take that deep breath. Decompress. Yeah. When you get home, you walk in, and the last thing you want to do is take your bad day at work home. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So, because that's their expectation is dad. Yeah. Not the guy that had a really bad day or had to do some things and be exposed to some awful things. Yeah. So,
well, I have to send a shout out to all first responders, because I'm definitely not somebody that it's missed on. Yeah. I understand all of you, and how you do have to go out every day, and the potential is there for who knows what to happen. Right. And then when it is time to go home, you have to be separated from your job. Right. And that's not the same as, like, I was a welder for 10 years, right? You have a bad day welding, you stick yourself with the poker, you're going to get an infection or whatever. But the knowledge that all first responders, including law enforcement, who are really dealt a hand every day that is a gamble, because it could be as simple as going and having lunch and enjoying people in the community, and then in a split second it could be something that somebody just. We live in a very interesting world, in my opinion, and one of the reasons why I am so pro law enforcement and I want to interview you all and have you out here and just be able to celebrate your lives and what you do is because I know what it's about. I get it. I see it. I know. And I just want to be one of those people who praise your job and what you do, you know? What was, you know, I don't know if you fully answered what was one of the biggest challenges for you. But if there was anything else you'd like to add, as far as like, if I was to just point blank ask you, what's one of the most challenging experiences that you've ever had while being a law enforcement officer?
So for me, it's honestly, it's in my current role. It's managing people and understanding that there's differences in just about everybody. And so this newfound leadership of being in charge of 48 employees and trying to make sure that their needs are met. And really the challenge is, for me, is balancing their happiness, you know, and everybody says, well, I'm not happy, or I feel this way. And it's difficult, and I understand that, but I can't try to manage everybody's happiness. Yeah. And for me, the leadership side of it has probably been the biggest struggle of trying to understand people in leadership in general. And so what I've come up with, and really through some trainings and things like that, is I just have to create opportunity for people to excel at things that they want to do, be a sounding board, and being able to guide people so that they can fit their own needs and still meet the mission of the sheriff's office. And so one thing I'm really excited about, and haven't shared a bunch, is, we started a deal. We actually did a consulting with Scott Metzler. Okay. He does Leadership Newton, Scott. And we just started it. We're like 3 sessions in. We're starting our own little leadership academy at the sheriff's office.
Very cool.
And so with this leadership academy, Scott's coming in bringing some of his expertise, and everybody's getting it. It's from the top all the way down. Very cool. So it's not just the frontline super, it's not just the administrators. It's the first, day one deputy all the way up to the sheriff, and we're all meeting and we're all learning these same concepts about leadership, so that part of law enforcement is a culture, and to have a healthy culture and try to keep people engaged, because there's a problem. I mean, a lot of law enforcement, a lot of turnover in a lot of agencies. And so, I started, when I did my Leela Command School, part of it was our capstone project. And so I took a deep dive into our culture, and I'm kind of a culture guy anyway. Excuse me. And what I came out of that, and it's just kind of general, is there was a lack of communication, a lack of consistency, and a lack of confidence in some of our leadership. And so that was like a kind of an eye-opening experience, because you show up thinking everything's good, and it's like, no, there's some stuff within our culture and our organization that we really need to address. Yeah. How do we do it? And that's where Scott Metzler came into play. And so we're super excited about it. I've had a bunch of great positive feedback. And so the leadership and understanding people has probably been the biggest challenge. I can do the job, right? I that's how I know I can go do those things. But with my current role, it's understanding people, and it's been a challenge.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because people are constantly changing, right? Society's constantly changing. 10 years ago, what was important to your staff and those that were, maybe be more time off or maybe be better pay, well, that could also change over time. So you're constantly dealing with a group of people, right, that like you said, are not the same. So they're always changing, and then even that person may change over time. with a leadership program that you have. If they take the leadership program, that they're going to be a different person armed with that knowledge, especially if they apply it.
Yeah.
So then their needs might change after their, I mean, it's very interesting when you are in the business of managing people, like you said. It can be challenging. I see that all the way. That you specifically that would probably be horribly challenging.
It is. Well,
I can imagine.
They keep getting younger and younger. We lowered our age to start working in jail at 18. Okay. So you got kids right out of high school potentially working in our detention center, and it's like, I think people, some have asked, like, what do you stand to gain out of this? And personally, I hope to gain some more leadership out of it, but it's not about me. For me, it's about the people and how can we make them successful, whether they continue their career with the sheriff's office or if they move somewhere else. Yeah. At the end of the day, if we could have been a part of helping them on their journey of leadership and understanding generational communication, because that's a completely different thing. Yeah. And so what I need and how I communicate is different from what an 18-year-old right out of high school is going to need. And so if we're getting the same information on what they need versus what I need, then maybe we can at least come to a middle road. Yep. And so there's a great benefit, I think, in just taking a deep dive into the office to try to make it better, because at the end of the day, that's the expectation of the public, right? Yeah.
Well, and then compounded by the fact too that because you're not only dealing with just your individual employees, you're talking about that's micro. Macro is everybody else. You're dealing with every person you come in contact with is different. They might communicate differently. They might be in a different day or time, or it might not be a good day at all, Right. But that's very interesting. I would like to learn further when you guys complete that program, just how that worked out and stuff. So sidebar, but just I got to tell you now, I'm very interested in that. I guess that kind of leads into my next question, which would be, what's one of the most rewarding things or experiences that you felt that you've had since you began in law enforcement?
Probably the most rewarding, there's been a ton, but when you can sit back and watch people do what they do best, that are 100% engaged in whatever they're doing, and know that it feels right. I mean, I saw that recently when we assisted with the Reno County homicide that was found in our county. My investigation division guys, they were out there working nonstop, and to sit back and watch those guys do what they do, man, that's impressive. Yeah. And so really, it's watching other people succeed is really the biggest joy I get. And I don't say that to diminish what my own goals or expectations are for my future, but I really enjoy watching other people enjoy what they do, and are able to come together and do something really well together.
Well, and as leader, you get to be a part of that.
Yeah.
So one way or the other, you're involved in that whole team that's being able to carry out that mission and fulfill the task.
Right.
That's great. Okay. So I'm gonna throw a curveball at you.
I like curveballs.
And strictly just your opinion.
Okay.
No reflection on anything or anybody else's, but strictly your opinion. What do you think is one of the biggest challenges facing law enforcement right now today?
That is a curveball.
Total opinion.
Okay. I think that there's a lack of people that have a desire to serve something greater than themselves. I think that it takes special people to do this job and any first responder job. But if you look across even our county or the state or the country, but most people don't want to volunteer to do anything, right? I'm going to do my job. I'm going to take care of my family. This is my little piece of the pie, and I'm going to just make that really well. But it takes certain individuals that are willing to put in the extra time and really put others' needs before themselves. And I think that there's just not a high drive for people to do that anymore. And so that's just my opinion. I don't know that I have anything to quantify that.
Yeah.
But it just seems to be a trend that it used to be about service, right?
Yeah.
And that's what the people want. And the folks that we are getting nowadays, I mean, we used to have 20 some plus applicants for an open position, and now we're lucky to get a few. This last time we actually got 20 applicants. So
Good.
I'm hoping that that's a ship that's moving back up.
Yes.
But even in the local political, I think we get a lot of people get hung up on the big stage, right?
Yeah.
The big politics. But for us in Harvey County and just in general, if you really want to make a difference, it's your local boards.
Yeah.
It's your school boards. It's your city councils. It's your county commissions, city commissions.
Yep.
That's where you can have an impact, right? Because it affects the local community.
Yep.
So I think there's just a lack of people that want to serve that, and I'm hoping that we can get more people engaged in the conversation of, hey, if you want to make a difference, like, let me show you how we can make a difference.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Today, with all and everything that you've experienced and known through law enforcement and just the whole capstone, would you recommend to a young man who's interested in being in law enforcement to be involved in law enforcement? Or would you tell them, times are changing?
Times are changing.
What do you, I mean, I'm interested.
I would say that if someone wants to if someone in Harvey County came up to me and says, hey, I want to be a cop in Harvey County, absolutely. Our community here has been very supportive, and that's something that not every community has. And so I love this profession. It's who I am. It's what I do. I think that the trend that nationally it hasn't been good. I'm hopeful that we can start trending back in a more positive direction, but it just takes one instance for it all to get, shook down again. And so I would recommend if they have a desire to serve and are willing to do the hard stuff or the heavy lifting, absolutely. If you're questioning whether you can really fully commit to that type of mission, then I would say that's probably not for you.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
That's good advice. Okay, so we are getting close to the end of the program. I got two more for you.
Okay.
How do you, I don't know how to ask this question. I guess not to go too deep here, but we all hear and see instances where an officer might not do the right thing.
Sure.
And this is in wherever, right?
Sure.
And it's projected right into your television set or right onto your phone algorithms or whatever the case may be. What do you have to say to somebody who is looking at a situation and saying, this was wrong and this is what this officer did, so are all officers the same? Are you all judged by the worst moment of one officer? And how do you... I know it's got to hurt sometimes because that's the trend. You see it. That's what people do.
Sure.
They've got this one instance of one police officer in Florida or Washington or California who's doing something that no officer agrees should happen. And then people want to project that onto everybody.
Right.
How do you answer that?
That is a really tough question. Yeah, it is projected. I mean, it is put out just in the law enforcement profession in general that if one guy's bad, that means we're all bad, and that's not the case, which is the battle that we fight all the time. And again, if we're looking at it, I would recommend that if you feel that way, wait till all the evidence is out. Wait till you make a decision until you've seen everything.
Yeah.
Because you might see that first piece and it looks really, really bad. But until you see all of it, then make your judgment at that point, because there's bad people in every profession out there.
Yep.
And so I would hate to just make a snap decision because that's what the norm is. I would rather, I mean, most of us, I think most people in general want to know the whole story. And that's unfortunate at times because you're never going to get the whole story.
Yeah, well,
right?
the whole story is not always as sensational
Right.
as half the story.
Right.
So, and I think we all hopefully are becoming more aware of that, and that kind of led me to my question at you. And I hope I didn't catch you off guard.
No, not at all. I'm okay with that.
That's a rough waters sometimes. You know,
it can be.
But as stated, I got one more question.
Okay.
Shawn, you get a chance to speak directly to the hearts and minds of anybody listening. What do you have to say to them?
Man, love your family and enjoy doing what you do because life's way too short to get wrapped up in some stuff, and find something you're passionate about. And I would say if people want to be part of the solution within our own individual communities, get involved. I mean, if you have a strong opinion about something, then try to get involved. And so you want to really, because you always catch the backside of people unhappy about this or a specific incident that occurred. Yeah. But when it comes down to it, okay, be part of the solution. There's not very many people willing to take that step and say, yeah, I'll do that. And that's kind of how I've lived my life, is like, listen, I'd rather be a part of the solution than to just sit back and complain about it. So really, I'm happy. I'm glad I'm here in Harvey County. This is my home. It's going to be my home. And I'm thankful for the people of Harvey County that they've been so law enforcement, supportive of law enforcement in general. And just, I wouldn't want to do it anywhere else, to be honest with you.
Yeah. That we are, my friend. That we are. Well, there you have it, folks, and thanks for listening to this episode of Harvey County Talk. I was your host, Lance Gormley, and our guest on the program today was Shawn Chapman, who is the Undersheriff for Harvey County, Kansas. Thanks, Shawn.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
You too.